If you're considering doing business on TikTok Shop, it's really important to watch this video. We're going to go over current TikTok Shop situation and why you need to be watching this video, why TikTok is asking for W-9s, the different types of TikTok like shops you can have, creators versus shops and stores, what the difference is between having a foreign representative, why you need a US representative. We're going to go through so much stuff. And today I have with me a return guest to the show, a very smart guy that I work with, a colleague of mine, Scott Letourneau. Thanks for being here, Scott.
Yeah, thanks,
Um,
James.
you're calling from Nevada, right?
Yeah, the quiet city in the desert, Las Vegas.
Quiet city in the desert. So this is I saw some of your emails and I appreciate you coming on because you're focusing and working a lot with TikTok Shop. So to jump right into it, tell me what's like the big overview picture of like what's going on right now with TikTok Shop. What are some of the things that are happening and the issues that you're helping clients fix every day?
Well, in the big picture, it's one of the best opportunities since Amazon FBA, probably back in 2013, to give you equivalent. So it's an extraordinary opportunity. Give you an example. I was at the Prosper Show a couple months ago. There was a top seller there that they were the #2 seller on TikTok Shop on Black Friday last year. They did 12 million in sales over a couple days, mostly through affiliates. So this was a US based company. So people realize that TikTok Shop has a built-in area for affiliates, which is different than Amazon. So that's why non-residents around the world are scrambling. How do we get on TikTok Shop in the US? It is in 17 countries, but of course the US is the biggest market, so they all want to be here.
And the difference between the obviously between TikTok Shop and Amazon is that TikTok is a social media network at first and a store next, where Amazon's just a store. So when having the affiliate built in is like people are now they're dancing and they're like, well, look at this hula hoop I'm using. You can actually buy it, click the link, and then they get an affiliate payment. And it's way more naturally referral based, incentive based. It's really a first of its kind in terms of how like a what do you say? How natural it is the transition to having a store and having affiliate links and how easy it is to set it up. You said they're in 17 countries. So what's going on? Like I know I deal with people every day from other countries who are using US LLCs and US businesses to do e-commerce. Everyone knows if they're trying to do that, they need a US representative. Why can't they just register in the Dubai TikTok and sell through that?
Well, they certainly can sell in these other countries, right? Just like with Amazon, you can sell in other countries. Amazon makes it easier if you want to add a unified account in the US, so that's different. But TikTok Shop, the way they look at it, or TikTok looks at it, is if you want to sell in the US, that's a different marketplace. You need a separate US company for that. So you can't sell on TikTok Shop in the US through your UK limited company that's selling on TikTok in the UK. So we need a separate US company. So that's step one, right? And a little disclaimer as we go through these things, everybody's probably aware of that TikTok could be sold. The deadline's coming up is June 19th. It'll probably get acquired by somebody. And we don't know if these rules are going to change slightly. Maybe you get in, you'll be grandfathered. Might be a good thing, right? So just keep that in mind as we go through what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, perfect. And so you need a US LLC to sell on TikTok Shop in the US. That makes sense. So now tell me about the different kinds of TikTok Shop, because you can work as an affiliate, you can work as an actual shop selling stuff. What's the other kind? You can have a product. What's the other
It could
kind of
be a
kind you can have?
creator.
A
So
creator.
yeah, so we're mostly going to be talking about setting up a TikTok shop. Think of it like selling on Amazon, right? And you could be a private label seller, have your own products. You can do drop shipping, things of that nature. But a lot of people in the United States are looking for side hustles, right? So if they have 1,000 followers on their account, they can become an affiliate. They'd love to sell your product if it's a great product. So that's what makes this very unique. So we're going to focus on setting up the TikTok shop and what's required. And so step one, where there's a little bit of confusion, has to do around what type of US entity, right? So we set up a US LLC when we're primarily talking about non-residents, right? US residents it's pretty straightforward. Non-residents, this is where it's a little bit more challenging. At the end of the day, the correct answer is they want you to go down the path that completes a W-9, which is a U.S. person, as you know, is a CPA. That's a corporation, a partnership. It's not a single member LLC. Disregard it. It's confusing. And ourselves, when we set up our TikTok shop, I got on with chat support, and TikTok support is actually very good, unlike Amazon. So it's very good, but you're going to get different answers. And the instructions aren't very clear. And some of the instructions are like 2 months older than the current policies. That's the other issue. And I asked this TikTok representative the same question like 4 different ways. Then I got off, came back a couple hours later, asked somebody else to clarify. And finally, they said, oh, now I understand what you're saying. Yes, if you want to be on TikTok Shop, you have to fill out a W-9. If you are going to be an affiliate or a creator, that leads into potentially a W-8BEN. So that's where some of the confusion is. So immediately we know, basically for non-residents, let's skip the single member LLC, disregard it. That can work on Amazon, that can work on Shopify, but not on TikTok Shop for non-residents. Now,
So
with the W-8B, sure.
With the WABEN, would the creator stuff be subject to withholding? If you get that WABEN opened up, you get that TikTok creator or affiliate account opened up as a foreign person, are they withholding taxes on those payments? Because I have an account and they show it as royalties, so I assume they would.
Yeah, so if you're in, if it's, what's called FDAP income, as you know, that's a situation where they would withhold, but then we get to, that's the purpose of the WABN, right? To avoid withholdings. Or do you see it differently? Maybe we can discuss that.
Well, I think because they're classifying it as royalties, if it's generated from a U.S. audience, they're going to withhold taxes. It's just like selling books on Amazon or generating income on YouTube from a U.S. audience. I mean, it seems pretty like they're. I have a 1099 from 2023, I think, and it came through as royalties. So if they're going to classify it as royalties, I assume they're going to be withholding. But I think it's been difficult for foreign people to open accounts up because I don't think they want to deal with the withholding or any of that compliance. I think that's part of the issue here is that they don't want to have to take a position that something is or isn't subject to withholding. So they're just going to say we're only going to work with Americans and not do any withholding.
So, and I agree with that because we're not getting requests from non-residents to become a creator or an affiliate. Those are all U.S. people that are the affiliates and the creators for the most part in the U.S. The people that we get the request from, they want to set up the TikTok shop as a non-resident. Then they want to access all the U.S. affiliates that can't wait to sell their product.
Yes, wonderful. And then the affiliates are the people based in the U.S. And I mean, I'm sure creators, it just might be easier to get paid. I don't know. That's not really the bulk of the people watching this video anyways.
Sure.
I know most of my channel is for non-residents, and there's going to be non-Americans setting this up. So now I have some questions about getting this account set up. So TikTok Shop, they need a U.S. representative. And that's generally, from my experience, they want a U.S. human that has a social and ideally lives in the U.S. Does an ITIN work? What are they really? That's what they're looking for, right? A U.S. person with a social on the account.
Yeah, so that's what makes TikTok Shop different than all the other marketplaces. They really, it's almost similar to Walmart where they want a US company, a US person, the IP address from the US. So it's not really geared towards non-residents. So let's just say that from the beginning. So they want a primary business representative that is a US based person, needs to have a U.S. ID, a U.S. residential address, a personal U.S. utility bill. Everything needs to line up, and so that's required. So that is the most difficult part, why a non-resident, if they don't, quote unquote, have someone they trust and want to work with, and of course that person, I've gotten several requests to consult about, hey, my buddy in Europe wants me to be their primary business representative. Do I have any liability or risk? Should I do this? Should I not do it? And of course, you know how that works with, anytime somebody asks, do I have any risk? Well, you're only going to like my answer if I say no, you won't, if nothing goes wrong. If something goes wrong, then you
Yeah.
say, well, Scott said I'd have no risk, right? So nobody can ever say that. We got to say, go talk to your attorney, and your attorney's going to be
Yeah, talk to
risk
someone else
adverse,
about risk. We can
and
talk
you'll
about
have like
potential
6
tax exposure.
contracts in place, and all of that good stuff. But the issue is, as if you're the person setting up the TikTok shop account and setting up the US company, you have to know that currently, I say currently, again, we talked about that June 19th date, could be extended, could be sold, could be different rules. You cannot change the primary business representative on your account. If you do, your account will be closed. So can you imagine launching an account, doing 100,000 a month, 200,000 a month, and then your primary business representative gets a little nervous, maybe for the wrong reasons, and they reach out and say, I'm going to remove myself, and your account is shut down. So that's worst case scenario. And it applies to the ultimate beneficial owner also. That's the owner of your US company. You can't change that either. And I confirmed this when I met with the TikTok shop onboarding team back in January at the CES event here in Las Vegas. So that's currently how it works.
Well, quick question. So does the representative in the US have to technically be an owner of the company? They cannot be the UBO, right? They can just be a representative?
So correct. So that's a good question. Let's say it correctly. They do not have to be an owner. And so this is where I see people on Fiverr and Upwork. We get the calls where they hired somebody for $100 to set up their account and they got rejected, and they confuse these relationships, and they'll say they're the primary business representative. Then they'll say, is this person the ultimate beneficial owner? And they'll say, no, which is the correct answer. Then the next question is, do you have any other ultimate beneficial owners? And they say no again. Then you get it immediately, your account's rejected. So we've
Yeah,
seen
we
all
have to
types
have
of
there has to be someone who owns. So you can
correct.
set it up right now with a US person who's a representative, but a foreign person who's the ultimate beneficial owner, and that can work.
Correct. So you and I, we're going to be, if we set up our own accounts, we're going to be the primary business representative, and we're going to be the ultimate beneficial owner. So that's
Yeah.
simple.
Selling on TikTok shop and like they said they require a W-9. So it's gonna usually be, if it's gonna be two foreign guys, we're gonna use a multi-member LLC so they can give a W-9 for TikTok shop. Is this 1099 gonna come in the name of the LLC or in the name of the representative?
So the representative is not in the situation we described, received a W-9. It's or a 1099, I should say.
Yeah.
So it's going to go to the owners, in this case, of the partnership that we set up, and not the primary business representative,
So yeah.
unless of course we don't know what everybody's deal is. If you have to negotiate with your cousin, I'll give you 10% interest and they own 10%. Obviously, that's an exception. We're assuming, you know, somehow you were able to convince somebody you're going to have zero ownership and you're going to take this on and have zero risk in life and blah, blah, blah. That's a little bit of a gray area, right? So let's assume you got that accomplished somehow. Then you get to the situation that you and your foreign partner, then you get into your world. We set up LLCs too, where you get partnership taxation, and the two individuals receive the 1099.
Yeah. Well, it's in the name of the partnership and then the K1s to the individual.
Yeah,
So
K1s,
how
yeah.
do you see this impacting like the taxes? Has the IRS looked into this and say, oh, you have a US representative, you're doing business in the US? In the case of, it's obviously the more involved that US person is, the worse it is. And what we've done for some clients is say, oh, that's a limited partner. They have nothing to do with the business. So it's no US trade or business is a position to take. So there's no partnership withholding. Have you had any experience or anything to share about that?
Yeah, as you're saying, that's a complex issue. We work with multiple tax attorneys. So as you said, there's two layers to it. Do you have a U.S. trade or business and effectively connected income? So you got to do that analysis. And just for everybody listening, you've heard Jim talk about this before. There's no black or white rules on this. That's why it's complicated. That's why you get different answers depending upon
It's
blog post things. You're right.
it's
So
pretty clear well, I think maybe we can agree. It's pretty clear for services performed abroad.
correct.
So that's
That's the
pretty
simple.
clear. But for e-commerce, inventory here, there, the best case scenario is that we have a tax treaty we can rely upon, and we can put together a memo that supports where you have permanent establishment. And we can go through there. Many countries, there's not tax treaties with every country, especially when we're talking about our nomad or our international clients that don't pay taxes because they don't live in a developed country. So they're living like I have these two Dutch guys. No, they're not Dutch. They're Danish. These two guys from Denmark. They moved to Bali, and they were able to get their TikTok shop open without a U.S. representative by just constantly calling. They have a pretty big business, but they were able to figure it out and get it open. They were asking me a lot, but they told me, "Hey, we actually figured it out. We got it open by ourselves." I don't. It was a rare example, but that was like 6 months ago.
Yeah, and sometimes that's a great example, Jim, where sometimes people, you'll hear these things. They got it open without a U.S. primary business representative. Well, you don't know for sure if they had a U.S. address, a U.S. utility bill, and they maybe were a student here once, one of them, so they had an ITIN or social security number, something of that nature, and they were able to comply. Or you don't know if TikTok Shop, as they're inconsistent with how they set things up and approve them. So I've seen a couple of videos too from 9 months ago. They've certainly, I think, gotten tighter as it becomes more popular. So they've added more people, and they've updated quite a bit of their instructions online, and they date them, which is nice. They'll say when it's updated. They'll put a date up there.
Like the IRS website.
Yeah. So, and getting back to the tax issue, the big one at the end of the day, you have a primary U.S. primary business representative. That obviously, would be a situation, U.S. trade or business effectively connected income, meaning something to evaluate. Also could come into play. Could that fall under a permanent establishment situation? And it depends on who's signing your return. So, Jim, somebody like you who has experience, feels comfortable. If there was an IRS audit, you could explain it in a confident way.
And we're going to mark the U.S. person as a limited partner. We're going to do as much as we can to indicate that there's no U.S. trade or business, and really try and support it as much as possible. Yeah, exactly.
And what I do want to say, it's important for the listeners. If you go to, and we work with tax attorneys, and we're a little bit more conservative, but if you go to a quote unquote regular CPA, they're going to be just black or white, or they're not even going to take it. So this comes into play because you might have a 24% owner that's a foreign company. Well, then that's where we get into this permanent establishment could be an issue. So that's beyond the capacity of here, but those are certainly some questions you want to address as you go through this process. Everybody's going to be a little different. Hey, let's be honest. You're doing a couple $1,000 a month, maybe no different. You're doing 300,000 a month.
Obviously, yeah.
You might want to take a closer look at it. You're from Dubai or Hong Kong with no treaty, as Jim's saying. Well, you probably want to take a closer look at it, because
maybe it's worth adjusting the structure. That's when you're going to talk to Scott or myself or someone and adjust the structure, get a second opinion, maybe run it through a corp, and then make payments out in a more formal manner, and pay a little bit of tax, but lower your risk. I said it's really case by case, and at the end of the day, you're responsible for you're signing the return. You're responsible. We try and take good positions. I try and give measured advice to clients, but
sure.
Right now, we're talking about just getting the account open. No, these people can't even get the account open.
That's step one, right? Let's get the account open and make a bunch of profits, and then have a tax problem to worry about, right? That would be good news.
So why is TikTok Shop harder to get approved other than like Amazon or Shopify? That was one of the questions.
Yeah, there's different nuances here. So TikTok Shop is harder on the front end, these things we're talking about, because it's not quite clear. Amazon, the requirements are very clear. It's just you got to be 100% accurate with all your business details and your personal details. TikTok Shop is not clear, and it's difficult to figure out their instructions. So that's what makes TikTok harder than Amazon. Where TikTok is better than Amazon is the support on the back end. They are really responsive and attempt to help you with live chat. Amazon is like, if you don't get verified first of all, they're using a lot of AI. So if you submit, hey, I know you say I need a utility bill. Here's what I got. Is this good enough? It's an automatic rejection. And then once you start digging yourself in deeper holes, I know the best people that charge $2,000 to $4,000 to get your account verified. Even as an Amazon partner, when we send people to Amazon through Amazon directly, they've told me, Scott, we can't guarantee we'll verify everybody and tell them on a new account they should allow 2 months. That's crazy, right? So that's what makes it more difficult, or Amazon more difficult. So TikTok on the front end, what we're talking about is the real hard part. The
Hmm.
support's a little bit better.
Well, the requirements are harder too. They require a U.S. signatory,
Yeah,
so
so
it's
that's
like,
the problem. Amazon makes it easy. You could be a non-resident individual anywhere in the world, sell in the U.S., and so they make it really easy. It's usually more difficult when you have to set up a U.S. entity on Amazon and go that direction, and you live in another country. Then there's a mismatch, and that's where it gets more difficult. But
and it changes all the time. So this video might be outdated soon. The main point of the video, which we're going to get to at the end, is that you should probably get, if you have a serious business, you're already making money, you should probably get serious like help. And this is like Scott's really focused on this stuff, so I'd recommend him. Um, and we'll hit more of that on the end. I want to go to one of these other questions that really stood out to me. What address or identification issues most commonly cause verification denials? And that was
yeah, so we start with the primary business representative, right? So they want a U.S. Social Security number, they want an ID, could be a U.S. passport or U.S. driver's license. You know, people make mistakes; things are expired, their name's spelled one way on here, and they put their name a different way on the account. Those are basic level things. The one that seems to become an issue is, of course, the residential utility bill. It has to be exactly matching. So we've had clients before where on the utility bill it abbreviated their initials and last name, that got rejected.
or they live in a non U.S. Like letter character place, right? They live in like Japan, right? Is
Well,
that a
yeah,
problem?
and so in the moment you're correct on that side. We'll clarify the difference there. We're talking about the U.S. primary business
Oh,
representative.
the U.S. business
So
representative.
this
Okay.
U.S. person you quote unquote find or get or work for you, and we'll talk about why it's very difficult and you can't find any companies per se that offer this service in a minute. But when you get to that person, everything has to match up. Now, Amazon, if you need a personal utility bill and you're, 17 and live with your parents, or we'll assume you're 18 and an adult still living with your parents, and all the utility bills in your parents' name, they let you prove the relationship to apply. TikTok doesn't do that. It has to be in your name. So you just have to make sure everything lines up and it matches. Those are some of the issues we found on the primary business representative side that people aren't doing properly.
Makes sense. I mean, I just submit it. I apply for so much stuff. If you watch the channel, I'm just like constantly opening LLCs and applying for banks. I have debit cards all over my house for a bunch of.
You're you're the master tester, Jim.
Yeah.
You are every drop down, every this to see what goes this way, and that's what you got to do, right, to figure this out. I will tell
Yeah.
you. Let's talk about the ultimate beneficial owner for a moment.
Oh, good idea. Good point. Yeah.
So again, not 100% clear, but what we found is, they want a U.S. Social Security number or an ITIN.
They wanted ITIN for the UBO also.
Correct. So, as you know, we talked a couple of minutes ago about they want a W-9. So, partnership or corporation, you're not going to get an ITIN up front. I don't know if you want to comment. I know you work with clients where you can do it a different way. We don't have to get into that, but there is a way to do it. But let's assume in the moment the UBO needs an ITIN. So if you're a new seller, you don't have one. What's your current time frame, Jim, to get ITINs approximately?
We're still waiting for applications from like late February, March. We haven't heard from any of those that we've sent. It's like I tell people it's between 2 and 6 months or not at all. So
Yeah, and isn't that crazy? So that's a that's a that's a challenge, right? So
yeah.
and we know now a lot of you may already have single member LLCs in the past. You have an ITIN, maybe you had you had it set up for something else. Obviously, you're going to have an advantage in this area, but that's something they do require. And they also want a U.S. residential address for the UBO. It can't be a foreign address. It can only be, and on the instructions, it says you have to have, it just says U.S. passport. So
How do you have a U.S. passport?
you don't. And so one of the things that the TikTok team has shared with us, they and when we chatted back and forth on several clients, are like, we know it says that, but we will take a non-resident passport, so an international passport. So when you think about that, as you know, you're in Miami, you have people that are moving all the time, right? And
Yeah.
they don't have a U.S. driver's license yet, or they don't have a U.S. passport, but they have their foreign passport, but they're in the U.S. That's basically what this is intended for. That's what opens up this opportunity is, but the instructions online don't say it that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so they want we do a lot of stuff like that where like you kind of posture yourself as a US resident. You don't have, and the thing is like these like credit cards, for example, if you use like American Express Global Transfer, you like, oh, here's a residential address that I have, and here's a phone bill with that address, and you kind of tell them you're moving to the U.S. and you live there full time, but you don't really have to like certify it or show them a visa, or like it doesn't really make it a difference from a like any kind of tax thing. Maybe it's a legal thing, I don't know, but as long as you pay your credit card, you're not gonna have a problem. But there's a lot of things like that where you kind of have to quasi confirm you're an American, but you're never ever in the U.S. at all.
And there's different definitions. I know you and I have gone down the rabbit hole separately with banks and local banks, and they, we want a local office, and we want their residential, and we do a site inspection, and we really want some, and then for proof, they're getting smarter. They want your work visa or a W-2 from your employer in the United States. Well, that's a whole different level. And I have clients that I'm sure you do that are non-residents that own U.S. real estate. They have their own condo here. They come to visit. So there are people in situations they come to visit. They have a tourist visa. They are here. They fall into this category. So that's an area where,
And there's always going to be a requirement for banking for non-residents that do business in the U.S. And I mean, like actually, like have real estate for is a good example. Like if you have rental units and stuff, you need to bank in the U.S. and you're not going to be a U.S. person. So that's always going to be a requirement. It is getting annoying, and I make a ton of videos about that because it's always changing. There's a bunch of questions about it, but
well,
it's the
uh,
same concept here, right? Like,
exactly. I'll tell you what's interesting in the Chinese market. I talked to the top 15 TikTok shop uh, partner in the world who supports Chinese sellers. So in China, you don't need a China is in Hong Kong are the two you can sell in the US from there, and you don't need a US entity. That's an exception. Then I talked to him. He said, Scott, we're getting a big demand that our Chinese sellers want US companies. I said, why do they want US companies when they can sell already from China? And he said, they want to get out of China. I said, yeah, I get that. So tell me more about it. He goes, the economy is so bad that they want to set up a U.S. company to be linked to their Chinese company to get an L1 visa so they can get a 1 to 3 year pass to come to the U.S. any point in time. They're trying to get all their money out to buy U.S. real estate so they have flexibility because they see what's going on in China. So that's very interesting. That's something
and
that
also
we'll
it's
be
kind of
getting more
something.
calls.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't have obviously like they control a lot of the information in my content marketing doesn't do well in China, obviously
Sure.
because they don't have YouTube, I guess. I don't know. So but at the end of the day, a Chinese person can have a US company, have US bank accounts and do this kind of business online and pay no taxes in the US, and if they don't send the money to China, which they wouldn't pay tax in China either. So they can actually save a ton of money just like everyone else, and it's yeah, maybe they're breaking the rules in China, maybe they wouldn't want them I don't know what the rules are there, but it's something where it is an opportunity that works for them too, and they're not blacklisted or anything. So there's like a billions of people out there that could benefit from using these U.S. companies and aren't blacklisted from banks. And I understand the desire, and it's a different world out of it. It's cool that they can actually use TikTok and sell to the U.S. from Chinese companies. I guess the idea is to cut out some of the drop shipping and have the drop shipping companies directly go to market. Is that like the manufacturers?
Well, I mean, it could be that, but primarily this is a financial situation, just like Amazon. Amazon's a loophole to get money out of China, and there's Chinese sellers that will, they already have some of the lowest prices, right, as the manufacturers, and they're getting money into Amazon, and they're charging a lower price because their whole goal is to get millions of dollars here to buy U.S. real estate.
And then they're manufacturing there, taking a loss or breaking even, but leaving all the
Yeah,
profit in the U.S. and U.S. companies and all that stuff. It's really interesting, the shifting of wealth from just like it goes straight from Americans to Chinese people staying in the US, but just shifting of who owns what. That's interesting. I mean, that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about in this call here.
sure.
I mean, we've already gone 30 minutes. I try and keep my videos pretty succinct. Anything else that you want, any other advice you want to give at the end of the day to people who want to sell on TikTok, want to sell on Amazon, and how do you help people? Like, kind of sell to us a little bit about how you can help people and why they should probably work with you.
Yeah, there's a lot of other nuances that come into play that we've seen where accounts get rejected and accepted. And we talk quite a bit like in tax planning, where you got to have the big picture first, look at the plan before you set up the entity. Are you currently an e-commerce seller? Are you also selling on Amazon? What does that look like? What is your goal with TikTok Shop? As far as when you get in the private equity market, they're paying up to 20x as far as valuation. It's a huge opportunity. So if you're a big seller and you're looking at an exit, that's a different subject where you really got to plan out. So when people come to us, we first like to get clarity on where they're at, what do they want to accomplish, their time frame. And then usually it would start with a strategic call with myself, and we kind of go over the big picture of the highlights. Then we can go a couple different directions. If you want us to map out the entire plan of what it looks like, and then we recommend that you always have your home country tax accountant attorney on the same page, so we are clear. Are we paying tax in the US? If we are, what does it look like in your country? Are you going to get a foreign tax credit? Are you not? We certainly want to avoid being double taxed if possible, and things of that nature. So that's a really important to get that mapped out. And then we go through and implement. And it's always best if we set up the entity. I know a lot of people think, oh, the articles are no big deal. And it may not be, but one of the things I'll give you a tip is that what TikTok does differently than Amazon when it comes to verification on the IRS letter, the CP 575 letter, they look at all three elements: the LLC name, the tax ID number, and the address to match up. The other ones, just including most banks, just look at the LLC name and EIN number for verification. That's good enough. So the address, and you have done a ton of videos on this, for sometimes it's like one step forward, two steps backwards. I got an address for this that worked, but it didn't work for this, but it doesn't work for this. So you're like one
Half
out
the
of three.
time, yeah, half the time clients come to me where we just open a new LLC because we have to give them a different address or something, and we have to, and instead of like filing a change of address, calling the IRS for a month,
Yeah,
it's easier to just get a new EIN and open a new LLC because it only, and that's the problem, because it only costs $200 to open an LLC. People are just like, oh, I'll just open the LLC and then I'll just hire James. Like, it's easier if you just, it's included in our cost if you want to work with me to
sure.
set this crap up. We do it all. We do the A to Z, and Scott does the same. I think if you're an advanced Amazon seller, you're already selling on Amazon, you want to get an audit of what you're doing, you want to break into the US. I think I referred a client to you this week, or if you have TikTok shop and you want to do it better and make sure you're verified, that's what Scott is really focused on. Scott, where can we find you on the internet? How can we schedule a paid call with you to meet with you if we want to do that?
Yeah, the best way to go to, we've been around for 28 years. We have one of those short URLs we got way back then, and we are based in Las Vegas, but we do incorporate in all 50 states through partners. So we use NV Inc. So it looks like NevadaInc.com. So if you go
Nice.
to nvinc.com, that's the short URL, and then you'll see a Let's Talk button, and you'll see the option to schedule a discovery call with my team. If you want to explain your situation first, then they'll point you in the right direction. If you already know you got some complexity, then you can also on the same page book a call with myself. And
Well,
then,
Scott,
yeah,
thanks for being here. I know there's a lot of overlap in what we're doing, but I think it's awesome to have the conversations and to make sure we're on the same page. As you and I both know, there's an abundance of people out there that need the help. So I'm not shy with introducing my clients to people who can better help them with these specific things, especially if you want to work with me and my team. We also do company setups, addresses, help with banking, a really good hands-on service that's helpful. JamesBakerCPA.com/schedule. Check us out. Schedule a free call with the team today. Or if you want to talk to Scott, he gave you his links too. Thank you everyone for being here, and comment below your experiences. If you have any experiences with TikTok or Amazon or stuff, share in the chat so we can kind of have a conversation about it with all the other people watching the video. Hopefully you stuck to the end, 35 minutes. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.